Audi's formidable R8 supercar also comes in Spyder guise, that's without a roof. You still get all the good stuff, which means a 5.2 litre FSI V10 engine screaming away just behind your head. It's just that with this variant, you'll be able to hear it even more clearly. Plus, the R8 Spyder can be a real driver's tool now, with a rear-driven variant joining the familiar Quattro model. Still want that Ferrari?
An Audi supercar was the last thing anyone would have expected back in the 80s and 90s, when customers had the choice of only 3 Audi models and weren't buying any of them in any great numbers. Today, the Ingolstadt maker's range is vast and the R8's existence is taken for granted. Sharing many components with the Lamborghini Huracan, this model is as good a symbol as any of how far Audi's progressed. And of all the R8 derivatives, it could be this Spyder convertible that best showcases the brand's all-conquering ambition. The first generation Type 42 R8 Spyder model was launched back in 2008, 2 years after the coupe version, with this Mark II Type 4S version arriving in 2015, aiming to be a little less of a style statement and a little more dynamically adept. Enhanced Audi space frame technology allowed it to deliver on that promise, encouraging Audi to further improve the 5.2 litre V10 engine's performance for the facelifted model launched in 2019. Its range broadened by the addition of rear-driven derivatives in 2021. It's that updated R8 Spyder we're going to test here, and it looks as eye-catching as ever. As with the coupe R8, Spyder buyers get a mighty mid-mounted 5.2 litre FSI V10, normally aspirated engine with dual injection system, dynamic throttle response and a distinctive hard-edged soundtrack. That's amplified further by exhaust flap control if you select a 620 PS Quattro variant like this one, rather than the entry-level rear-driven 570 PS version. If the weather's inclement but you want to better hear the engine, you can lower this electric rear window and revel in the fact that all that sound and fury is real and authentic rather than artificially processed through a sound actuator, as the amplified exhaust note is on Audi's lesser sports car, the TT. And when the clouds clear, it'll be time to open the fabric hood, which retracts in just 20 seconds and can be operated at speeds of up to 31 miles an hour. So older owners' toupees will need to be firmly tied down. The rear-driven version we mentioned earlier allows for a lower entry price and gives the opportunity on track for controlled drifting, but it does without some key features you get with this more powerful Quattro variant. The rear-driven R8 has no adaptive dampers, the steering has a fixed ratio, and the limited slip differential is of the conventional mechanical type. It's hardly any slower than its showroom stablemate though. 62 miles an hour is dispatched in just 3.8 seconds en route to 203 miles an hour. With either drivetrain behind the V10, there's a 7-speed S-tronic transmission, and the dynamic handling owes much to the engine's low mounting position, which is achieved thanks to dry sump lubrication. The wheels are controlled by lightweight aluminium wishbones, a layout that reveals motorsport DNA. The performance figures we've given you are only the merest fraction slower than you'd go in the equivalent coupe model that's 125 kilograms lighter. Predictably though, your senses tell you the opposite. We thought the R8 Coupe felt thrillingly fast, but with the roof down in this Spyder model, the oral sensations under hard acceleration are even more electrifying, especially through tunnels, where you'll revel in the kind of oral intoxication that turbocharged rivals just can't emulate. It's a symphony you can properly orchestrate to via a button Here on the lower left-hand side of the steering wheel for the sport exhaust system you get on the Quattro model. This one of 4 circular satellite controls that feature on this 3-spoke wheel. 2 other key ones feature on the left. The upper one to select your preferred drive mode, driving mode comfort, dynamic, individual and auto are the options, and a lower checkered flag designated one that takes you straight to this Quattro model's added performance setting. Get your setting right and there's launch control to fire you off the line with a flex of your right foot that sends the rev needle shooting round the colour changing rev counter you get in performance mode. If it isn't flashing red as the steering wheel paddle shifters change up, then you're not trying hard enough. Audi talks of a 20% improvement in throttle response with this Mark II R8, and you can really feel it as the gauge flares up to the 8,700 RPM red line, then never strays more than 2,000 RPM from it as the twin clutch gearbox throws ratio after short stacked ratio with rifle crack speed, and the car hurls itself at the horizon with animal savagery. As for the corners, well, it turns, it grips and it goes. Avoid the rear-driven version and this R8 will do the same in damper conditions too, courtesy of the kind of four-wheel drive system that rivals from Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren and Aston Martin will make you do without. This one's a Quattro setup able to flash 100% of torque to either axle instantly on demand, and as a result, traction levels are so high that anyone starting to approach this car's limits on a public road will quickly make themselves a target for the local constabulary. The car feels agile too, aided by a massive 50% improvement in torsional rigidity in this second generation form, and by a torque vectoring system. There was slight vagueness in the steering, to some extent masks small recent improvements made to the suspension and the steering. Finally, stopping power is ferocious, particularly so with the ceramic brakes that come with the Quattro model. Visually, the R8 Spyder remains a distinctive cocktail of low-slung curves and delightful design extravagance. Though in this improved version of the second generation model, the influential shape of the original Type 4S design is expressed in a tauter, more technically precise way. As before, we're talking Ferrari, but with a German twist. Whether you think Audi should have more fundamentally changed the look in recent times comes down to personal perspective. Aesthetic continuity certainly hasn't done Porsche's 911 Cabriolet any harm over the last half a century. This car doesn't have that one's understated elegance, but it looks more exotic and exclusive, just as a six-figure supercar should. This design's elegant, lightweight fabric top with its largely aluminium and magnesium linkage perfectly complements this R8's lightweight design approach. Curb weight's just 1,695 kilos in this Quattro model. Just 44 kilos of that is accounted for by the roof, which opens or closes in just 20 seconds at speeds of up to 31 miles an hour. You'd usually activate the process from inside the car, but you can also do so from outside by using this standard advanced key. As you can see, the hood mechanism's acrobatics deliver an intricate piece of street theatre, the hood compartment cover moving fluidly on two 7-link hinges. When closed, the top integrates neatly into the design line, stretching low above the body and extending to the rear in two long, slender fins. The fins surround a rear window that has its own retracting mechanism activated by a press of this button behind the gear stick. This means that even when the weather's inclement and the roof's up like this, you can still retract this glass pane and get a richer dose of the wonderful V10 engine's oral fireworks. But of course, for that, there's nothing quite like having the top down. The main button for the hood is right next to the other one, activating a folding process that sees the soft top sandwiching itself in Z formation into the flat storage compartment over the engine. With the roof open, having the rear window up can reduce buffeting, but to fully deal with that, you'll be better off installing the proper clip-on textile wind deflector that comes included with the car and is stored in the boot. Audi says that with this in place, wind flow around the head can be reduced by up to 90%. Otherwise, the design of this Spyder model is familiar from its coupe counterpart. So, as with that body style, horizontal lines define the front end with its huge sculptural single-frame radiator grille. As we told you in our background section, Audi took the opportunity in 2018 to introduce a package of updates to this second generation R8, the visual changes made being extremely subtle. The single-frame radiator grille has a wider, flatter line, thick bars divide up the large air inlets, and flat slits in the hood are reminiscent of the Audi Quattro brand icon. Plus, the smarter front splitter is wider, underscoring the focused look. In profile, owners of the pre-2015 era first-generation R8 Spyder model will pick up on the design change that further picks out what is arguably this Mark II model's most unique feature, these distinctive and customisable side blades. These sit just below a flowing shoulder line that's gently massaged by contours above the wheels, supposed to reference the Quattro four-wheel drive system. The door handles are almost invisibly positioned in the shoulder line's shadow, while lower down the light edges on these side sills echo those of Audi's Le Mans winning R18 e-tron Quattro race car. More beautiful detailing is provided by this motorsport-style aluminium fuel lid integrated into the rear wing on the right-hand side of the car. At the rear, a large diffuser increases the downforce, another solution taken directly from motorsport. As before, the R8 Spyder is almost entirely hand-built at the Audi Bellingerheft purpose-made production plant near Neckarsulm. This large hood compartment cover is made of CFRP, or carbon fibre reinforced polymer, and has two cowls, each of which encloses 3 ventilation slits that can feature personalisable trimming. Carbon fibre reinforced polymer doesn't only feature on the panel work, it's also a major constituent of this car's lightweight ASF Audi space frame construction. Combining this material with aluminium not only helped to make this car 25 kilos lighter in this second generation post-2015 era form, but also contributed to a massive 50% improvement in torsional rigidity. Enough, according to Audi, to make this the stiffest open-topped car that money can buy. Inside, you're introduced to what the Ingolstadt brand calls a luxury-level racing atmosphere, and an interior that remains an object lesson in how to package a 2-seat sports car. True, you don't get the exotic feel of a Ferrari or a Lamborghini here, but personally we trade that for the extra space, fantastic build quality and better all-round visibility provided by an R8. Audi is much better at ergonomics than most of its rivals too. As before, one of the cockpit's key distinguishing features is what the stylists call the monoposto, a stylised large arc that encircles the driver's area of the cockpit, starting in the door and ending at the centre tunnel. But if that's familiar, you'll also find plenty that's different if you've yet to experience this post-2015 era second-generation Type 4S model. The changes beginning with the grippy, flat-bottomed R8 performance steering wheel. Extra round satellite buttons have been added to control engine startup and driving dynamics. Plus, there are these 2 further smaller round controls, a dial on the left to set the car up for different weather conditions, and a button on the right to alter the exhaust note. As for all the infotainment functionality, well, that's all been located in the Audi Virtual Cockpit, a 12.3-inch high-resolution instrument binnacle display screen that presents all necessary information in richly detailed, high-resolution 3D graphics. The driver can choose between 3 screens, the classic view, the infotainment view, and the performance view. Owners taking to the racetrack will particularly appreciate the latter, which supplies data on torque, power output, oil and tyre temperatures, lap times and G-forces. The displays around the speedometer and rev counter can be customised to individual preferences. The supportive Napa leather upholstered sports seats of this test car come as standard at the top of the range. The lesser Quattro trim level gives you bucket seats. As for practicalities, well, there's more than you might expect in terms of cabin storage, with a big glove box compensating to some extent for these tiny door pockets. And beyond that, well, were we to be graduating into this car from a 911 Cabriolet, we'd miss the little rear seats that Porsche give you there. So useful for chucking a jacket or a designer shopping bag onto. In an R8 Coupe, Audi compensates for the lack of this by providing a space behind the seats large enough to take a golf bag. That's missing on this Spyder model. Instead, there's just this little vertical storage compartment behind your left shoulder, the lower part of which holds media equipment. The lack of storage space behind the seats is quite significant because the room you actually get in the boot is extremely restricted. At 112 litres in size, the same as in an R8 Coupe, this trunk offers less than half the amount of luggage space you'd get in, say, a rival Mercedes AMG GTC Roadster. Nor does it help that previous cubic inches here are occupied by a bag for the tyre repair kit that Audi provides in lieu of a spare wheel. To be fair, the boot beneath the bonnet of a rival 911 Turbo Cabriolet is about the same size. At the time of this test in autumn 2022, Audi was asking around £138,500 for an R8 Spyder in rear-driven form, with £11,000 more getting you higher spec edition trim. There's a big price jump to get a Quattro four-wheel drive version like this one, though that does include a power hike from 570 to 620 PS and the addition of ceramic brake discs, stiffer performance sport adaptive suspension and exhaust flap control for a rortier engine note when you select the additional performance drive mode. You'll need around £158,500 if you want the four-wheel drive Quattro variant. This top edition version is £7,000 more. This Quattro R8 Spyder model's closest rival, the Porsche 911 Turbo Cabriolet, costs about the same. A Mercedes AMG GTC costs a fraction less, but that's only rear-driven, as is the cheaper but much less powerful Aston Martin Vantage Roadster. Exotic rear-driven models like McLaren's 720S Spyder, Maserati's MC20 Cielo and Ferrari's Portofino M cost a lot more, as does the Lamborghini Huracan Evo Spyder, which shares much of its engineering with this Audi. The spend required here leads you to expect plenty of equipment and an exquisite finish, and you get it. Performance spec and the V10 engine are standard across the lineup, and things kick off with the rear-driven entry-level model marked out from the other variants by 19-inch 5-arm twin-spoke wheels. Plusher edition spec on a rear-driven model gets you the 20-inch 5V spoke Evo rims that feature elsewhere in the range. What we have here. Side blade finish will be important to an R8 customer. The side blades are body coloured with the base rear-wheel drive version, or matte titanium grey with the base Quattro variant. Opt for Plusher edition spec with either drivetrain, and the side blades gain this carbon finish. If, as most customers will be, you're choosing between standard and edition versions of the Quattro variant, the main additions at edition level are the replacement of bucket seats with this test car's diamond-stitched sports seats, an extended Napa leather upholstery trimming pack, a black styling pack that gives you black Audi rings on the nose and a black windscreen frame, a bronze finish for the wheels, and an upgraded 13-speaker 550-watt Bang & Olufsen sound system with speakers in the head restraints for an excellent audio experience, even when driving with the hood open. We'll finish this section by talking about safety. And one surprise here is that Audi has chosen not to equip this car with the kind of cutting-edge camera-based safety features now becoming commonplace on much humbler cars. For instance, one of those autonomous braking setups that scans the road ahead for potential accident hazards and will help you to brake to avoid them. The Ingolstadt brand makes the excuse that cars of this kind are all about lightweight and that adding these kind of features would hurt the R8 on the scales. For us, that's a poor excuse. These are electronic rather than mechanical systems after all. Every Porsche 911 Cabriolet now includes autonomous braking, and the R8 ought to as well. To be fair to Audi, you don't get this kind of tech in rival Aston Martin or McLaren convertible models, but that's no reason for not fitting it here. It's not very Vorsprung dirt technique. Even the most basic autonomous driving features, adaptive cruise control for instance, are missing too. But what you do get are all the usual basic electronic aids for braking, traction and stability control, including an ESC system that includes torque vectoring for sharper corner turn-in. Plus, as you'd expect, you get twin front and side airbags, though not the curtain bags fitted to the R8 Coupe. Efficiency technologies such as the freewheeling mode, in which the R8 coasts with the engine decoupled, have helped with fuel efficiency, but don't expect too much. Official figures suggest that up to 20.9 mpg on the combined cycle and up to 305 grams per kilometre of CO2 is possible from a V10 rear-wheel drive model. The figures are up to 20.3 mpg and 315 grams per kilometre for the alternative four-wheel drive Quattro version. If you were to regularly replicate these kinds of readings, you probably shouldn't have bought this car in the first place. The returns you do get are aided by the 5.2-litre FSI engine's COD, or cylinder on demand technology. When one of the four upper gears is engaged, this shuts down the cylinders on either the left or the right bank of the engine, which means that at low speeds, when you're driving off throttle, you'll probably be at the wheel of a V5 rather than a V10 R8. What else? Well, you'll be able to get your R8 serviced at any Audi dealership, and there's a choice of fixed or flexible prepaid plans, depending on whether you cover more or less than 10,000 miles a year. We're slightly disappointed by the 3-year, 60,000-mile warranty, though, particularly given that the mechanically identical and supposedly more temperamental Lamborghini Huracan comes with a 4-year unlimited mileage package. The 3-year deal you get with equivalent McLaren and Porsche models is also unlimited mileage too. On to residuals. Well, with only around 30 cars each day being hand-built at Audi's Neckarsulm factory, there's enough rarity value about this R8 to keep residuals buoyant. It seems there are no limits to Audi's ambition, and having grown its mainstream range exponentially over recent years, it's also established itself as a supercar manufacturer to be taken very seriously. The R8 Spyder sits at the top of the Audi pile, adding a slickly engineered fabric hood to the standard R8 package. It's a touch more visually elegant than the muscular coupe, but those all-wheel drive V10 mechanicals mean there's no let-up in its performance. The improvements to this Mark II model haven't fundamentally affected this car's appeal, but they're welcome nonetheless, further smartening the already jaw-dropping looks. Do you really need more than this in a lottery-winning convertible supercar? You'd have to wonder.